Why did God create Adam before Eve? He didn't want any advice on how to do it. Today, I'm going to recap a 2017 action thriller film called Revenge. The movie commences with a panoramic view of an expansive desert landscape, interspersed with immense, majestic Rocky Mountains, making them a perfect setting for desert wildlife hunters. Shortly after, a helicopter arrives, transporting a man named Richard and his girlfriend, Jennifer, to Richard's house situated in the heart of the desert. They intend to spend quality time together before Richard's yearly hunting excursion with his buddies. As the pilot prepares to depart, he presents Richard with some peyote as a welcoming gesture for his guests. Moments later, Richard enters the residence to find the alluring Jen, who seems to comprehend the desires of all men. They subsequently engage in a fervent tryst in bed for some time. Later in the day, Richard receives a phone call from a woman, revealing that he has a wife and children. The exchange between husband and wife proceeds smoothly, as Richard's wife believes he is only in the desert for a hunting trip. The following day, Jennifer, clad only in her undergarments, heads to the kitchen for water, only to be startled by the unexpected presence of Richard's friends, who have arrived a day ahead of schedule for their hunting expedition. Richard is displeased with their premature arrival, as he had planned to keep his relationship with Jen a secret. Nevertheless, he is forced to accommodate his two friends, Stan and Dimitri. As they introduce themselves, it is apparent that Stan is quite eager to meet Jen. As night falls, they unwind by the pool, taking in the stunning desert scenery. Dimitri is engrossed with his binoculars and becomes curious about the item the pilot had given Richard. Richard explains that it is a potent hallucinogenic drug with powerful effects when ingested. He claims that a small dose could incapacitate an entire football team and recounts a story of an individual who, under its influence, amputated his own leg without feeling a thing. To avoid any disputes among his friends, Richard instructs Jennifer to store the drug securely. However, Jennifer is also captivated by the narcotic she has just learned about and, instead of stashing it away safely, conceals it within her necklace. Subsequently, she exits the house and performs a provocative dance to entertain the men. Jennifer transforms into a captivating showgirl for the evening, captivating the men, particularly Stan, who is the most enthralled. His excitement peaks as Jen invites him to join her in her sensual performance. The next morning, Jennifer is greeted by Stan, who escorts her to breakfast. With Richard absent, Stan seizes the opportunity to get closer to Jen. Unfortunately for him, Jennifer simply disregards his advances and returns to her room without explanation. Undeterred, Stan follows her into her room. With a disheartened tone, he inquires why Jennifer is evading him, given that he believed she was attracted to him the previous night. Jennifer replies that Stan is not the type of man she is attracted to, particularly due to his short stature. Stan is insulted by her words, which translates to him despising her while desiring her to satisfy his unbridled lust. Frightened, Jennifer succumbs to Stan's sexual assault. Shortly afterward, Dimitri appears but remains silent, merely observing his friend's actions. Unwilling to intervene, Dimitri exits the scene and turns on the television, raising the volume to drown out Jennifer's screams. A few hours later, Richard returns to the house and finds it peculiar that his friends are unusually quiet. Stan informs Richard of a minor issue with Jennifer, but refrains from providing details. When Richard checks on Jennifer, she implores him to call the helicopter immediately as she wants to leave at once. Observing her tears, Richard seems to grasp what has transpired and chastises his friends for their deeds. Awakening again, Jennifer insists on leaving right away. Richard reassures her that his friends will apologize and offers her a significant sum of money to forget the incident. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Jennifer threatens to inform Richard's wife of their affair unless the helicopter arrives to take her away. Richard's explosive reaction frightens her, leading her to flee the scene. Upon noticing Jennifer's escape, Richard and his friends pursue her. Jennifer's flight comes to an abrupt halt when she encounters a dead-end cliff. Ultimately, Richard and his friends corner her near the edge. Richard pleads with her, expressing remorse for his actions, and attempts to pacify Jennifer by calling the pilot to take her home immediately. Relieved that her request has been granted, Jennifer calms down, but suddenly, Richard pushes her off the cliff, causing her to be impaled on a tree during the fall. Stan and Dimitri are shocked by Richard's actions and did not anticipate that he would have the audacity to push her to her death. Richard explains that they would be in jeopardy if Jennifer were allowed to leave, as they could face 15 years in prison for their actions. In other words, Richard fears that his desert affair would be exposed to his wife. Subsequently, Richard and his friends head back to the house to collect their hunting gear. They plan to return later to eliminate any evidence of the murder and continue their hunting trip as if nothing occurred. The scene shifts to Jennifer, who is still impaled and now besieged by ants. Surprisingly, she is alive, possibly because the tree branches did not strike any vital organs. Trapped by the shrubbery, Jennifer struggles to free herself and spots the lighter she frequently carries. With great effort, she manages to grasp it. Subsequently, she tries to set the dry shrub on fire, causing it to break and enabling her to escape with a branch still impaled in her body. Meanwhile, Richard and his friends are heading towards Jennifer's location to dispose of her body. Fortunately, the noise from their vehicle alerts Jennifer, prompting her to quickly move from her position. Hindered by the shrub branch embedded in her stomach, she struggles to move but manages to hide just in time, leaving the three men stunned upon finding her gone. They surmise that she was either rescued or managed to flee on her own. As a result, the trio attempts to descend the cliff to confirm Jennifer's whereabouts. Hearing their departure, Jennifer seizes the opportunity to leave her current location. Since the distance to circumvent the cliff is considerable, the men only reach the spot after nightfall. They start questioning how Jennifer could simply vanish, and simultaneously, they discover traces of her blood, leading them to follow the blood trail. Their pursuit halts when the trail ends at a lake. The three men decide to split up to search for Jennifer, but Stan, concealing his fear, opts to wait in the car in case she returns. In the meantime, Jennifer, despite bleeding heavily, continues to escape with her remaining strength. Hearing a vehicle in the distance searching for her, she panics, and Dimitri appears on his quad bike, leaving after failing to spot her. Unbeknownst to him, Jennifer was hiding underwater, holding her breath. After reaching the shore, she notices Dimitri nearby and spots his unattended rifle by his vehicle. Dimitri, caught off guard, tries to calm Jennifer, who appears eager to kill him. However, unbeknownst to her, Dimitri had lured her by placing an unloaded weapon away from him. Dimitri quickly informs his friends, but first wants to torture Jennifer before bringing her to them. Fortuitously, she manages to grab a knife from Dimitri's pocket, stabbing him to death and leaving him in the lake. Jennifer resumes her escape, armed with the equipment she acquired from Dimitri. Her journey is short-lived, though, as the vehicle she is driving runs out of fuel, forcing her to continue on foot with the branch still lodged in her stomach. Not far from her location, Jennifer stumbles upon a cave and plans to rest there briefly. She is still in agony from her injuries, which are so severe that they are difficult to treat. Upon noticing her necklace, she suddenly recalls the narcotics she had hidden earlier and the effects they could have. Without hesitation, Jennifer consumes the drugs, despite their terrible taste, as she desperately needs their effects. Shortly after, she starts experiencing inexplicable changes in her body. The hallucinogenic impact of the narcotics kicks in, and Jen starts to hear voices and undergo intense hallucinations. In a semi-conscious state, she starts administering emergency treatment for her injury. Jen, who no longer feels any pain, finally does something excruciatingly painful. As the knife cuts through her abdomen's skin, she appears calm, showing no signs of agony. After extracting the branch from her stomach, she heats up a drink tin and applies it to her wound to stop the bleeding. The following day, the scene shifts to Stan, who is still asleep in the Jeep. It is revealed that Richard threw the dead animal, as he was unable to find Jen and instead found the game. At this point, they are unaware of Dimitri's actual death. Stan, having just woken up, goes to the lake to wash his face, but is shocked to discover Dimitri's lifeless body floating in the water. Unlike Richard, he seems to restrain his anger over his friend's demise, assuming Jen is responsible for it. They are left with no choice but to dispose of their friend's body in the lake. Richard then lashes out at Stan, accusing him of not having accompanied Dimitri earlier and instead staying silently in the car. They leave the area and ponder other methods of finding Jen. Meanwhile, Jen has healed from her injuries and has acquired the bird symbol from the beer can use to treat her stomach wound. She grabs her rifle and bolts from the cave. It turns out that it was just a terrible dream induced by the drug's effects, causing Jen to have recurring nightmares. Once Jen fully regains consciousness, she readies herself to continue her journey. This time, it is not about escape but revenge. Jen, who previously seemed weak, transforms into a strong and fearless woman. Fueled by relentless emotions and armed with a shotgun, she begins searching for Richard and Stan in the desert. On the other hand, Richard and Stan have found the quad bike Jane took and plan to split up to search the area. Richard leaves Stan, who is still in pain from his nose injury, and checks its condition with a mirror. Unbeknownst to him, the mirror's reflection reveals his location to Jen, who wastes no time pursuing him. Despite being barefoot and injured, she continues to follow him. After Stan has driven through the desert for some time, his car runs low on fuel. Jen seizes this chance to aim her weapon, equipped with an 8x scope, directly at him. Jen, with no prior experience, attempts to target her assailant's critical areas. The bullet hits Stan's shoulder, and she hears his screams of pain. When Jen stands up again, she notices that Stan has vanished. However, she manages to track the man who had violated her by following the trail of blood on the ground. Meanwhile, Stan, already wounded, puts on a sock to halt the bleeding. Jen, however, loses his trail when the blood path ends at a spot where she finds only his shoe. Stan, now in hiding, loads his weapon with bullets intending to shoot Jen from behind. But due to his injured shoulder, he struggles to aim accurately. Consequently, his shot misses and only grazes Jen's ear. Already injured, Jen flees while Stan continues to shoot at her. She uses a shard of torchlight to deter Stan's pursuit. Luckily for her, the glass shards manage to injure Stan, who now struggles to remove the embedded pieces from his feet. After extracting the glass, Stan, unable to run, returns to the car to chase Jen. The severe wound on his leg makes it difficult for him to press the accelerator pedal, but his anger fuels him to ignore the pain. Jen ultimately manages to kill her previous assaulter. Seeing Stan's state, Jen overhears a walkie-talkie call from Richard, which amplifies her hatred upon hearing the voice of the man who almost killed her. Richard, meanwhile, seems disappointed at his failure to locate Jen. Furthermore, Stan didn't arrive at their predetermined location and didn't answer his walkie-talkie call. Tired and frustrated, Richard decides to return to his house. Arriving home, Richard appears visibly stressed by the current situation. He assumes that Stan, who had it returned, must have been killed by Jen. So, he plans to leave the desert by contacting a helicopter pilot for extraction. He cleans himself up before departing, but hears a suspicious sound, prompting him to investigate despite being completely naked. He suspects Jen has come to kill him, but finds nothing out of the ordinary inside or outside the house. Suddenly, Richard is startled by the TV's sound, and his fear of Jen's arrival materializes. At this point, he feels helpless, as Jen has targeted him with her shotgun. Jen shoots Richard in the stomach, and they engage in a firefight. Overwhelmed, Richard forces himself to walk away with a gunshot wound in his stomach while Jen continues the pursuit. But as Jen is about to enter the room, she is unaware that Richard is waiting to shoot her. Luckily, the blood flowing from Richard's wound gives him away, prompting Jen to find an alternative approach. Growing weaker from blood loss, Richard uses a food wrapper to stem the bleeding. Soon after, Jen locates him and a chase unfolds between the two. At one point, the blood on the floor causes Jen, who is running, to slip. This circumstance enables Richard to assault Jen effortlessly, and the already weakened Jen struggles to confront the man. Ultimately, Jen resorts to her last resort by targeting Richard's stomach wound. She seizes the rifle and succeeds in killing Richard with her final shot. In the end, the trio of men who mistreated and nearly killed Jen receive their just deserts, and Jen's quest for vengeance reaches its conclusion. Covered in blood, she takes several gratifying steps outside before pivoting upon hearing the approaching helicopter's sound. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.